In the last Yamaha Raptor 660 rebuild episode, everything came to a stop. The crankshaft I bought turned out to be completely wrong, which meant tearing the engine back apart. After weeks of waiting, the new crankshaft is finally here. Today, we're rebuilding the transmission, installing the crankshaft, and hopefully closing the engine cases for the first time. If everything goes to plan, this engine will finally be one big step closer to its start. But first, we need to make sure this crankshaft actually fits.
Hey guys, welcome back to Shed Build Speed. If this is your first time here, I'm doing a complete rebuild on the Yamaha Raptor 660. And in this episode, we'll be installing a brand new HotRods crankshaft as well as an upgraded transmission. But it didn't went as smoothly the last time, so let's hope it works this time. Let's go.
Alright guys, so let's start with taking out the old crank. This was the incorrect crank. This crank is for a Yamaha XT660. We need to remove it, and since the bearings have quite a tight fit, what we're going to do is we're going to place this in the oven. This metal will expand faster than the bearing material, which means that if we heat up the oven at 100 or 120 degrees Celsius, we can take out the crank fairly easily. So always do that. Do not try to hammer it from the other side. You can actually bend the crank, and that's something you definitely don't want to happen. You can see a little bit of grease in the bearings. Usually you don't want that because it can somewhat fight with the oil. What you typically want to use while assembling an engine is some kind of assembly loop. I got this one from Gmoto. It's an American brand. It should be quite common over there. As you can see, made in the USA. I typically like to use this assembly loop. Another thing to note is that all these bearings are brand new, and you will see that the last person that opened up the crankcases tried to remove this the incorrect way. I don't know how they tried to do it, but you can see markings on the casing itself. So the correct way of disassembling these bearings is with a blind bearing puller, and you can actually take one of these, correct size of course, and then you have one of these drivers, and they will expand this so it locks into place, and after that you can take this puller and pull it out upwards. I can insert a clip of that from another project. And these blind bearing pullers are not that expensive. This one actually I bought from Amazon was around 17 euros, which roughly translates to 19 or 20 US dollars. So yeah, definitely get yourself one of these. These come in very handy.
Alright guys, so there could be a possibility that this crankshaft doesn't want to drop out of itself. And what we're going to do is we made this jig where we have enough height that the crankshaft can lower from the engine case. If it doesn't come out on itself, we can slightly help it. I do want to know that the correct way of doing is flipping the crankcase around and install a crankshaft puller on it. That way you can pull it out, and you can pull it out straight. You don't drive it towards the side or anything. Let's take out the seals, make sure that we put this thing in the oven, and after that we can take out the crank. I will show you how to do it.
Alright guys, so the crankshaft dropped right out of the crankcase. It did take a little bit more force than I wanted to, but this tool did came in very handy. So right now we'll make sure that the crankcase cools down, and then we can start assembling. Okay guys, so for installing the crankshaft, we're going to place this crankshaft in the freezer. This way the outer bearing ring will contract, and we're also going to heat up the crankcase, and we do it with this torch. That way the tolerance between the crankcase and the outer bearing ring will get bigger, and then we should be able to drop the crankshaft right in.
Okay, so now that we are ready for installation of the crankshaft, We're going to heat up this bearing race, then we'll take the crankshaft out of the freezer so we can install it. Alright, so we heated up the crankcase with a torch and we took the crankshaft from the freezer. As you can see, it's pretty cold, so let's see if it fits first try or not. Make sure that the connecting rod is facing between there. Okay, great. So it fits perfectly. So another thing to note is whenever you put the crankshaft in the freezer and you take it out of the freezer, condensation appears. As you can see, there's quite a lot of condensation. You can ask yourself, is it okay if the bearing also has condensation? Because yeah, it's basically water, of course, but that evaporates as soon as the cold bearing material gets in contact with the crankcase, and since the crankcase is quite hot, it evaporates the water out of it, so it's really not big of an issue. And another thing to note is whenever you're going to put oil in it, the oil protects it from rusting also. So no, it's really not big of an issue, but it's one thing to keep in mind. What we can do is put on some assembly lube inside of the bearing. That makes sure that if there's any condensation left, the assembly lube protects the bearing from rusting. So let's just put a little bit of assembly lube in there. This way we make sure that the assembly lube is across the entire bearing. You can already feel it running a little bit smoother. One thing not to forget is of course the bearing on the connecting rod, so the big end bearing. So let's put some assembly lube on the connecting rod as well. It will drip down in there, and after that we will spin the crankshaft so to make sure it's across the entire bearing. It's just one thing I like to do to make sure the assembly lube gets everywhere. So now that the crankshaft is fully installed, we're going to make sure that the crank casing cools down once again, because it completely heated up by heating up this part of the crankcase. Since this is an aluminum crankcase, it will heat up the rest of the crankcase. So whenever this is cooled down, we're going to install the transmission. We're also going to lube up the needle bearing and all the other bearings to make sure that they're pre-lubed.
Alright guys, so now that we've installed the crankshaft, we're going to install the transmission. And I've got a new transmission laying down over here. And the transmission consists of a reverse shaft, an output shaft, input shaft, a shift drum, the shift forks and the shift shafts, and the reverse lockout. Over here I have the old transmission laying down. The problem with this transmission were the shift forks, and as you can see they were pretty damaged. And the issue I had with this gearbox was that it wouldn't shift into second gear. This gearbox is from an 01-02 style. And this one is from 02 and up. So this is a better gearbox. It has different ratios. So I wanted to get a whole new set for it, except for the balancer of course. Now we will start assembling the gearbox. Before we start installing the transmission, we need to make sure that we lock this bearing into place. We're going to Loctite this bolt with medium Loctite. And the next thing we will do is install the reverse shaft. And the reverse shaft consists of the shaft, the gear itself, and 2 C-clips. So make sure that both of these C-clips are on. And we're going to make sure that this half moon falls into place nicely. And as you can see, it also have a half moon shape down below in the hole. And the next thing we need to do is put in the output shaft, and for the output shaft we're going to loop this O-ring as well, and that's just to make sure that when putting in the output shaft we won't shear off the O-ring. And we're also going to put some assembly lube on the shaft itself and on the gears. Okay, so now that the reverse shaft and the output shaft are installed, we can also install this balancer. And it's very important to loop up the needle bearings over here. So let's loop up this part of the shaft. And now we will install the input shaft. We do need to finesse it around a little bit, but that shouldn't be no problem. And next up is the reverse lockout mechanism. So let's make sure we put some assembly lube on that as well. That should be enough. Because on the other side of the crankcase there will be a seal, so it's very important that it will be lubricated. So just slide it into place like this. And then we can place the shift drum. Do not put any lubrication on the bottom of this, because it will gather up in that hole, and that prevents you from making it sit at the bottom, because it will push it up. Okay, now it's in. Make sure that you align this pin in this hole. Test it like this. Now it works correctly. So another thing to do is install the first gear, and you have to make sure that the flat side is facing up. So this, just slide it over here, make sure that it fits in the groove, and it does. Then you can put the washer on top of it, and now it's correct. So the next step will be to install the shift shafts and the shift forks. As you can see, we have 3 shift forks and 2 shift shafts. The shorter shift shaft is for the C10 in my case. So if you have an older model, that will just be C. The other 2 go on the longer shaft. This letter at all times need to face upward. This needs to face downward. Okay, so now we can put in the shift forks. Make sure that the letters face upwards as mentioned before. Put some assembly lube on it. Do it on the front and do it on the back. Then we can slot it into place. Now it's seated correctly. Then you can turn the shift drum until it slots into place on the shift drum as well. Then we can take the shaft, and this is the shorter one. It doesn't matter if you put it on like this or if you put it on like this. Both sides are equal. So put some assembly lube on it, and then you can slide it into place. And now it's bottomed out. Now we can move on to the next shift fork. Put some assembly lube on it. Again, the letter faces upwards and the L goes on the bottom. And then we can finesse it in. Okay, and now we can do the R, top one. Put the lower one back in its place. Alright, now they're all fully seated. Now we can loop up the other shift shaft as well. Slide it into place. They all should line up. And that one bottomed out as well. Oh, there it is. Okay, great. And as you can see, they all are in the correct slots on the shift drum. So the top one is, the bottom one is, and the one on the right is. Now to confirm that the transmission is working correctly, we can spin the input shaft and everything turns smoothly. Now we're going to make sure that we put it into another gear. So this is second gear. This should be third gear. And you can feel there's a lot more resistance This is 4th gear. And this is 5th gear. This one has the most resistance. So now we just confirmed that the shifting mechanism works correctly. And as far as the reverse lockout goes, on the other side there goes a shimmering as well as this clip, and that's something you also need to keep in mind, that you clip this into place. So let's do that. Alright guys, so the right half casing is prepared to go onto the other casing. I've put some assembly loop inside of the bearings. We've mounted the oil pickup and the oil cover. The mating surfaces are cleaned, as well as the mating surfaces on the other crankcase. And there's actually 3 dial pins in total we need to install. One is over here, and as you can see I still need to clean out this hole. One is over here that actually has a seal on it, I will show you, and one goes over there. And these are the 3 dial pins, and this one goes in the middle. So always make sure you grease this O-ring up. It sits like this. First we're going to apply some RTV and let it dry for a little bit, and then we can install the right case half. So the sealant I use is this Athena seal. It's basically a silicone RTV seal, and we're going to apply it slightly and dab it into place. Okay, so it's quite a messy job, but as you can see, the RTV is in every corner. So now we're going to put on the other case half. First, we need to install the dial pins. So as mentioned before, one goes here and the other one goes right there. And the one with the O-ring goes there. So now we can install the case half. So now that the case half is on, we need to see if it is seated correctly. And we can do that by looking around the cases and see if we see any openings. But as far as I can see right now, there are no openings. So let's check the back side. No, it's seated properly. So now we can tighten up the bolts. They are 8mm and they need to be torqued to 7.5 foot-pounds or 10 Nm. And there are case bolts on both sides. So on the right side you have one over here, here, here. There's one over there. And on the back side there's one over here, there and there. We're going to hand tighten those and then we will flip it around and there's more over there. Now we're going to tighten these up slightly by hand, because since they only need 10 Nm or 7.5 foot-pounds, we can't put them on too tight. So just a little bit to make sure that they are snug. Okay, so now let's flip the engine around and do the other side. So I've got my torque wrench set to 10 Nm, which roughly translates to 7.5 foot-pounds. I currently only have this torque wrench, because my ratchet torque wrench is not here right now, but we're going to use this one nevertheless. Now that this is all torqued to spec, we will flip around the engine, and after that we can torque the other side. Okay, so now everything is torqued to spec, and as you can see there's a lot of excessive RTV. What we're going to do is we're going to let this dry and then we can just scrape it off, because otherwise it gets a mess trying to clean this off. So we're going to let this dry out and then we can take it off easily. Also, let's see if our transmission still runs smoothly, and it does. The same goes for the crankshaft. That runs very smoothly, so I'm very happy with that. So whenever you're trying to turn the crankshaft and it won't spin or it's hitting something, that's the balance shaft. And the balance shaft, you don't need to worry about that one yet, because when we're going to assemble everything, we're going to put this on timing, then it won't definitely not hit. After weeks of setbacks, wrong parts and a lot of patience, the bottom end is finally back together. Seeing this engine back in one piece honestly feels like a huge milestone. There's still a lot of work ahead before this Raptor runs again, but we're getting closer with every episode. If you've enjoyed following this rebuild so far, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what's next. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace!